in our conversations the last time we were together, you poignantly asked me about what my routine is, a little bit about my sleep, a little bit about my diet, and very quickly you were able to dial in. How much of your day does that consume versus, other activities?
Well, I remember our conversation explicitly. I think that I have a natural propensity to always lean into people's lifestyles, right? It was a part of my life without thinking about it. So the four pillars of health, like how you sleep, how you eat, how you move, and how you think. So your social environment, psychologically, who you see in the mirror. But those four pillars are like the table legs to a table. And while they don't have to be perfect, I always like to try to nudge and hopefully spark some inspiration in people whenever I meet them to remind them of these four basic tools that they have complete control over. Now, not entirely. If you've got a
Yeah.
newborn, you've got kids, you're busy, you got a lot of workload, obviously some of these things suffer, but we're not seeking perfection. We're seeking progress in these areas. So we just want to be able to mindful and monitor, how am I sleeping? How am I eating? How am I moving? And how am I thinking? So in terms of how does it take up my day? I mean, these are things that are prerequisites for how I operate. Now, again, I spend a lot of time on the road. I speak to a lot of the companies that you represent and have great relationships with. And a lot of times we're cross traveling back and forth where sleep
Yeah.
is not optimal. Airplane food is obviously most of the time not edible. I hate to say that. And then, when you just have environments that are not conducive to being your best performance self. So the Apollo Ohno from my Olympic days was fine tuned down to the millimeter of extracting the highest amount of performance, both mentally and physically. But now I'm in the real world and I don't have access to a lot of those things. And while I can try to control the input source of food and et cetera, I'm in a new hotel room. Maybe someone next door is super loud or on a call. Maybe there's kids running in the hall. There's things that are outside of my control. And so there's this relinquishing of surrender, I guess, or surrendering to this situation and outcome, and then settling back in and saying, I still need to perform. But more importantly, it's just about, I think most of us, this is probably post COVID, where there was a realization that your health and your mindset is really intrinsically tied to not only the quality, but also the fulfillment aspect of your life. And so my mission is to remind folks that this is tied to this and this is tied to everything else. And so just being able to make those small incremental changes in your daily personal life can dramatically impact the way that you show up in the corporate boardroom, in the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial aspect.
Yeah.
And people read that energy, Seth. Like if you have a really bad week, that's psychologically, subconsciously going to be affecting the way that you
Yeah.
perform. So, how do we mitigate some of these things in a way where we can still show up and people can read and feel that energy in the most positive perspective that gives us access to the goal that we ultimately want?
Yeah. It's there's a phrase, I'm going to try to connect this. Knowing doesn't make a difference. I know I shouldn't eat this or I know I shouldn't do this, and
Yeah.
knowing it doesn't make a difference. It's like, what is the difference that from knowing to either avoiding or doing what you know you should be doing?